Let's return to This Week in America. Here's your host, Rick Bratton.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This Week in America, Raising Children Soul to Soul by Kristy Kaye offers a practical approach to parenting, an open-ended invitation to rediscover childhood memories and explore its wisdom. This highly acclaimed self-help book guides parents through a transformational process of embracing lost memories and awakening perceptions in order to apply them to child-rearing. Kristy is an author, spiritual life coach, counselor, writer, instructor of spiritual courses for beginning to advanced states of consciousness. For over 30 years, Kristy has helped create paradigm shifts in people's lives. Raising Children Soul to Soul, Discovering Your Lost Childhood, an innovative concept with a practical approach to parenting. Kristy Kaye from Australia, our guest on This Week in America. Kristy, welcome to the program. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you for inviting me, Rick. I love to be here.
Well, this is such a pleasure for us to have you on the program and talking about the book, Raising Children Soul to Soul. And you start off by saying children raised with awareness and energy enlightenment are amazing individuals. Talk about that. Explain exactly how that works.
Well, children that are allowed to develop their own individual uniqueness are amazing. They're amazing. The kind of things that they do, we all read about. And such a child who had exposure to this kind of educational was Einstein, so we all know what he did.
Oh, yes. So we could all raise our own little Einsteins if we do it correctly.
It begins with the evolution. Really, it's more not about the education, but so much more about the evolution of a soul. And in understanding that, you realize how much you're more a participant, a spectator, than necessarily a participant. So, you have your things that you need to do to guide and direct, but it's more about allowing the child to develop their uniqueness and you to support that.
You know, it's interesting because, what you're not talking about is enroll them in daycare when they're 2 years old so they get a jump start on education. It's much more than that. It's about the self. It's about the soul. The book is Raising Children Soul to Soul, Discovering Your Lost Childhood. You talk about the key to opening that door to illumination that we were talking about in the child rearing process is to understand your own childhood. So for us to raise our child, we need to understand our childhood. Explain the significance of that.
Well, what happens to us is when we start parenting, we may say things to ourselves like, oh, I don't want to do what my mother did, or oh, I don't want to be the father that my father was. I want to do it better. But the problem is that without realizing it, we just take like a knee-jerk reaction and we start raising our children exactly as we were raised. We may change little things, but overall we end up raising them very similar to the way we were raised ourselves. So if we understand that, then as we raise our children, we can understand who we were as children, because all those memories, they come up with the first child. So it's like an opportunity for us to delve deeper into understanding ourselves and what worked for us, what didn't work for us, so that we can eliminate it from the way that we support and guide our child.
When we go back and we delve into our own childhood and we do this inner retrospection that you're talking about, are we surprised sometimes what we find out about ourselves? Maybe that opens some keys to who we really are.
Yes, and also to the things that we block. Like
exactly.
You hear, many, many children saying, I had a wonderful childhood, my mother and father were fantastic, and then years later they may find out that they were abused or they were interfered with in some way. It's normal. It's just something that happens. It's not like it doesn't happen to everyone. In some ways, we all have something in our childhood that we want to block out and we want to think about happy childhood. But it's much more productive if we actually recognise how we were raised, concepts they are, our parents did the best they could, and we'll do the best that we can with raising our children. And it's a win-win situation because it's all about evolution.
With us on This Week in America is author Kristy Kaye. That's KristyKaye. Her website is KristyKaye.com. Book, of course, available at the usual places. If you go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, you can link on directly to Kristy's website. The book we're talking about, Raising Children Soul to Soul, Discovering Your Lost Childhood. Let's talk about the first 7 years. I'm really surprised as I'm reading that how you talk about the first 7 years are really crucial for how the child is going to be developed and spend the rest of his life. Talk about why it's so critical in the first 7 years.
Because when we come from the universe and we incarnate, we're just like a sponge. We have an incredible intelligence already, but we choose our parents for their concepts as much for the healing that we need to do with them. So it's a real business arrangement. It isn't a fairy tale. It's like there's a real reason that they're our parents and that we chose them. And that reason evolves in the first 7 years. So if we do have a very difficult childhood in our first 7 years, it's for us to understand that we picked that because that helps us heal our past lives. So in evolving through that pain, we are actually healing the past pain. And it's an amazing process. It's very difficult to explain in the limited time that we have. And I'd love to go on and explain it over a couple of hours, but we don't have that time, I don't think.
Well, that's why you wrote the book, and that's why we're telling people to pick up a copy of the book, Raising Children Soul to Soul, Discovering Your Lost Childhood. Difficult in 20 minutes to do justice to all of the great information there. Hopefully we'll give people a foundation for what it is you're talking about, spur their interest, and then have them look into it further and pick up a copy of the book. Chapter 1 is The Truth of Our Incarnation. Talk about that, why that's important. That's the first chapter in the book. Obviously, that's a foundation for what you're telling us.
Yes, well, you can have like twins even who are born at the same time, but they absorb their environments differently. So they have, one may come in on the energy of the parent, one parent, and the other may come in on the energy of the other parent. So it's a really individual journey when we incarnate. That's why we can't generalize children or we can't generalize families. We can't generalize anything. We have to look at the individuality of each child, and the only one that can do that is we, the child, we, the adult, can look back over our childhood and try to understand what happened in those first 7 years, what happened at the time of our incarnation, what did we absorb? Sometimes, people go back to being in the womb and listening to parents not wanting them to come in, So there's all kinds of things that happen, but it doesn't matter what kind of a beginning we had. It's all relative to what we ourselves chose.
No, that's interesting. So what some people realize when they delve into their past, that they were basically an unwanted child, and probably subconsciously carrying that with them all their lives?
Well, then they'll have fears of abandonment or fears of rejection or those kind of fears that no one will kind of understand where that came from. But everything that we have trouble in our life always comes back to the first 7 years as the beginning of it, beginning of I call them concepts, but they're kind of misunderstanding. But the word concepts, I float around and then people say to me, what do you mean by concepts? Well, they're misunderstanding. They're things that we pick up that aren't really related to the truth of a soul.
So a lot of these issues are reversible, correct? If you understand, you could deal with these and maybe change the path, the negative path that you're on.
Absolutely. It's so easy to change. Awareness is the key.
Yes.
So when we become aware, straight away the healing starts to happen. Just becoming aware. So, you're opening a chapter of your book of life, you're reading it, well, of course you're going to get understanding. And then you have to realize that everything comes back to you. You can't blame anyone else. You have to take responsibility for those things that happen to you, because that's the only way you can heal them.
The book is Raising Children Soul to Soul, Discovering Your Lost Childhood. Kristy Kaye is the author and our guest. That's Kristykaye. If you're going to Google, you go to our website, which is KristyKaye.com. Get information on the book there. And of course, you can link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. An important part of the book are the 4 communication perceptions, personality types. Just very briefly, what are those and the impact they have on us?
Well, each of us have 4 perceptions. Each of them are very important in we're like an orange, you could say, that's divided in 4 quarters. So that's us, the total us. So we have 4 different perceptions or gifts or personality types, people call it, and each of those are really important to understand, because our primary one is the one that we communicate through. So we see the world through that primary perception, and we take communications in through that. So if we can understand what our primary perception is, we can understand where our trouble is, because each of them have an in-balance and an out-of-balance perception. So the out-of-balance perception can really throw us in our life. And of course, we're raised by parents who may have one of our gifts out of balance. So we have to make ourselves aware of who we are as a soul, so that as things come up in our life, we see them as challenges, not tragedies, and that we can heal those challenges with information, knowing about ourselves, like what was our gift? Oh, that's just our gift out of balance. Oh, that's just confused souls affecting me. Those kind of things are real that we need to address as a soul and heal.
You know, in the book we're talking about is Raising Children Soul to Soul, Discovering Your Lost Childhood. Kristy Kaye, the author, our guest on the program. Her website, KristyKaye.com. I mentioned that you've dealt with a number of people. In fact, I think for over 30 years, you've seen the practical application and how this has changed lives. Talk about that as you deal in workshops and one-on-one with people who read the book and will comment to you. It has to be very rewarding when you see changes in not only their children and child rearing, but changes in themselves as well.
Yes, well, I do a lot of what I do is not so much writing books, but really doing the one-on-one, or not really one-on-one, but I train people to be spiritual consultants, and they go out and they run programs. They start at a ground level, and they run programs that help people to understand themselves. And there's courses for like every step that they take. So they choose the journey, but there are a lot of choices that they can make. And once they have their communication techniques solid, they can then find out for themselves what they need to do to help themselves grow spiritually and evolve.
In the book,
or heal.
Raising Children Soul to Soul, the book, Chapter 2 is about each of us studying ourselves. And I'm reading that and I'm thinking, I wonder how many of us really understand ourselves. Is that a big problem, that we go through life, we do things, and we're not quite sure even why we did those?
That's right, Rick. You're absolutely right, because the whole journey is all about the whole of your incarnation on planet Earth is really all about you learning about who you are as a soul and why are you here. You're definitely not here flippantly or to belong to anything. You are here on your own journey to heal the past and maybe to do something unique that will change things on planet Earth. Nobody knows your journey, but the most important part of it is for you to understand how you tick.
You also, in the chapter is talking to your guidance and angels. We've got a couple minutes left in the program. I find that fascinating as well. Are there sort of inner voices that will help us along the way if we tap into those?
Well, the 4 gifts that we talked about, the
Yes.
4 perceptions, that's how you do receive messages from your angels. So once you know that, you know exactly how you'll get those messages. And yes, it's all about refining that communication, because that's where the wisdom, your wisdom comes from. That understanding that communication and being guided by them to find out more and more about yourself, your past, your present, where you're going, that kind of thing.
Another book that you've written is Constitution of Our Soul. Talk about that and the importance, and I would recommend that book as well, because the soul is the key, isn't it?
The Constitution of Our Soul is all about that. Angels, souls in confusion. It's a big picture of everything that a soul needs to know about themselves. And it has techniques to help people who don't have access to courses or to spiritual guidance. It helps them to do it for themselves.
Talk about the journey that you've been on, what you went through, and when you realized the role of the soul and looking back on your parents and your childhood. Talk about that evolution where the light, basically what came on for you.
Well, when I was very young, I used to channel, and I never realized that's what I was doing, but I always had like an audience of adults, and I would just say these things, and my mother was very concerned about me sharing things, and she didn't like the attention that I was getting because she felt, she felt protective.
Right.
But yeah, so it was in a safe environment, really. There were priests and archbishops and things like that. And so from early, I did have that communication and that sensitivity. So it was a matter of taking a journey to understand. And one of the big things that happened to me was, when I was in Switzerland, I went to a place in Trogen and saw Pestalozzi's, what he had created for poor people of war-torn... No, he didn't create it, sorry. But what was created in his name for children of war-torn villages, and they put them all in these houses, and how that worked. It was just amazing. I went and had a look at that, and I was given a tour, and it was just fabulous. So, for me, it's always been about discovering, what works and what doesn't work from an early age, and particularly with children.
A minute or so left in the program. Raising Children Soul to Soul, Discovering Your Lost Childhood is the name of the book. And as I'm reading this and reading comments from people, that not only will change the way you parent, but it offers us an opportunity to explore ourselves as well. So this is more than just parenting, this really self-awareness, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And everything that I do is all about the evolution of the soul, and helping people understand how important that is, and getting off their agenda a lot of the trivia that we all get caught in, and putting that soul awareness, soul consciousness back in there, so that, and also developing community so that people have somewhere to share their wisdom. That's very important too.
The book is such an important
environment.
Yes, and you do such an excellent job of the presentation of this, and you can't help but read it. And if you follow and understand what Kristy is talking about, you will be a better person. It's called Raising Children Soul to Soul, Discovering Your Lost Childhood. The author is Kristy Kaye, that's Kristy Kaye. Her website is KristyKaye.com. You can go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and log on directly to Kristy's website and get all of the information. Our guest on This Week in America coming from Australia, whereas we're taping it in the evening, it's morning for her over there. We're getting into spring, she's getting into fall. That's the difference here. But Kristy, it's been great to have you with us on the program. A lot of really important information in the book. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you very much, Rick, for giving me the opportunity to share it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
It's been our pleasure. Raising Children Soul to Soul, Discovering Your Lost Childhood. Kristy Kaye is the author. The website is KristyKaye.com. Of course, go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link on directly to Kristy's website to get information on the book. You're listening to This Week in America, and we're back after these messages.